Hi everybody! In this video we're going to go through page 6 of your packet. So if you turn to that, we're going to be doing numbers 18 through 25, continuing in our practice of special right triangles. So page 7 of your packet should look like this, where it has all the rules written out. That might be something that's good to have in front of you. Actually, I'm going to have it right here on the video for reference as we go through the problems. Alright, so starting out with number 18, it looks like we have 30, 60, 90 triangles here. We could look at this and we can fill in that we know this is 60 because it gives us the 90. And looking at this triangle here, we know we're going to use these rules. It gives us the hypotenuse, which is 8. So if we know to go from hypotenuse to the short leg, from 8 to the W, you're going to divide it by 2. So W equals 4, and we can label that with a 4. All right, but now it's asking us to also find Y, and we know that this triangle here on the left is a 30, 60, 90 triangle as well, because these two 90-degree angles make up that straight angle, and that's 30 degrees, right? So in this triangle, the 4 is that long leg, and we're looking for the short leg. To get from the long leg to the short leg, we're dividing that by radical 3. So that's going to be 4 over radical 3, but we know that we need to rationalize that because we can't have a radical in the denominator. So we multiply that root 3 over root 3, and we get 4 root 3 over 3. And that's going to be our value for Y. Okay. If you need a refresher on how to rationalize the denominator, I'll link my video on that at the end. Okay, so now moving on to number 19, again, we have a few 30, 60, 90 triangles, and here's how we can tell. This is a line, so if this is 90, we know that this is 90, which means that this is 60. And if this angle here is 90, and this part's 60, that makes this part 30, which then makes that 60. It might be helpful to kind of label your angles beforehand. So looking at this triangle here that I'm highlighting in yellow, it gives us the hypotenuse of 6, which means that to get from hypotenuse to the short leg, we're going to divide that by 2, and then we get W equals 3. All right, now to get from, we're going to look for this side, even though it's not asking us for it, because it's going to help us out. To get from the short leg to the long leg, we're going to multiply the short leg by root 3. So this right here becomes 3 root 3. Now this triangle that I'm highlighting in green, that 3 root 3 represents the short side, and we're looking for the long leg. So to get from the short leg to the long leg, look at our rules, we multiply the short by root 3. So how do you do that? 3 root 3 times root 3, which gives us 3 root 9, which is 3 times 3. I did a lot of steps there, probably unnecessary, but Y is going to be 9. All right? In number 20 here, it looks like we have 45, 45, 90 triangles. You can do that when you add up the angles, and we know that these are 90, which means that these are congruent, and then these guys are congruent, right? So looking at this first triangle here, I'll highlight it in yellow. If this leg is 6, that means that this leg is 6. That happens every single time in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. To get from leg to hypotenuse here, this is what we're looking for, you multiply by root 2, so that becomes 6 root 2. But we know that in this green triangle here, this leg is congruent to this one, so we have this being 6 root 2 as well. Right? So I'll write that W equals 6 root 2. Now in the green triangle, W is the leg, and we need the hypotenuse. So go to leg to hypotenuse, you multiply by root 2. So 6 root 2 times root 2. Root 2 times root 2 is just 2, so 6 times 2 is 12, and 12 is going to be our value for y. Okay, in number 21, we have a set of parallel lines. Hopefully you noticed that right away. And when we have parallel lines cut by a transversal, we know that alternate interior angles are congruent. Here's our set of alternate interior angles, 30, and that would make this one a 30. Doing that will help us label the rest of our angles. We know that right here we have a 60-degree angle, and right here we have a 60-degree angle as well. So we're working with the 30, 60, 90 triangle in both cases. Okay, so in this top triangle here, it gives us the hypotenuse. So let's figure out everything else from there. So to go from the hypotenuse to the short leg, we're going to divide by 2. So that makes this 6. And then to go from short leg to long leg, we multiply the short leg by root 3. So this here becomes 6 root 3. Okay. Now focusing on this bottom triangle here, the 6th root 3 that we just labeled is the hypotenuse of this bottom triangle. So now we need to find the rest. To get from hypotenuse to short leg, we're going to divide that hypotenuse by 2. So we have 6 root 3 over 2. That becomes 3 root 3. So our W is going to be 3 root 3. And I'll label that here for you. Okay? But now we have to get this long leg here to solve for y. From short leg to long leg, it says we multiply by root 3. So 3 root 3 times root 3 is just 3 times 3, which is 9, and that's our value for y. All right, let's keep going with this. Okay, so in number 22, the first thing that you're going to want to do is probably just to label your angles. So we know that if this is a line and this is 90, that makes that 90 because a line is 180. That makes this a 45-degree angle, and that makes this a 60-degree angle. So we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and then we also have a 30, 60, 90. So we're going to be using both sets of rules. Make sure that you don't get them confused. So let's look at this 45, 45, 90 triangle first. What we're given is the hypotenuse. And even though it's not asking us necessarily to find these legs, that's probably something we want to do because it's going to help us eventually find W and Y. All right, so let's do that. To get from hypotenuse to leg in a 45, 45, 90, we're dividing by root 2. So 8 divided by root 2. It would be nice if we could just leave it like that, but we can't. We have to rationalize the denominator. So that gives us 8 root 2 over 2, which simplifies to 4 root 2. Okay, so each of these legs is 4 root 2. Okay, in the 30, 60, 90 triangle here, the 4 root 2 represents the short leg, right, because it's across from that 30-degree angle. Right, so now we can figure everything else out. To get from the short leg to the hypotenuse to find W, so short to hypotenuse, it says multiply short leg by 2. So 4 root 2 times 2 just gives me 8 root 2. And that's going to be our value for W. Okay, and y would be the long leg. So to get from the short leg, there's no option from hypotenuse to long leg, if you look here, but you can get from the short leg to the long leg, and we have that information, so we're good to go. To get from short to long, we multiply short by root 3, so 4 root 2 times root 3. Just multiply the radicals together, we get 4 root 6, and that's going to be our value for y. Okay? All right, I like number 23. Number 23, we have a set of parallel lines. So what you might want to do here is draw in this height here, because once you do that, you create two 90-degree angles, right, which make up that line of 180. That makes this triangle into a 45, 45, 90. We also know that if this is a rectangle, this is 6, this piece is 6, this piece is 4, this piece is 4. So in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, these legs are congruent, so we can label that with a 4. And to get from leg to hypotenuse in a 45, 45, 90, we just multiply by root 2. So y becomes 4 root 2. So y equals 4 root 2. Okay. Now it's asking us for w. W, if you cleared out all my sloppy writing on this problem, w represented the entire length of the bottom here. Now we just found that this was 4, and we know that this piece is 6, so that should be fairly easy to figure out. 4 plus 6, w equals 10, and that's the length of the entire bottom here. Okay? Number 24 is referring to perimeter. So perimeter, if you remember, is the length around, right? And it says it's perimeter of a square. Well, we know in a square we have 90-degree angles, and we know that in a square all sides are congruent. That helps us out a lot. Because now each of these triangles that are created by this diagonal here are 45, 45, 90 triangles. So we can label those angles 45. So we know what rules we're working with here. This diagonal of a square is going to be the hypotenuse of each of these triangles. So to get from hypotenuse to leg, we're dividing the hypotenuse by root 2. Now, 18 root 2 divided by root 2, these just cancel, so each of these legs is 18. And we know that perimeter is the length around the shape, so the perimeter of the square would be 18 plus 18 plus 18 plus 18, or 18 times 4. So the perimeter is 72. 72 units, because it doesn't give us how it's measured. All right. Number 25, the area, it asks for the area of a triangle. Well, we do know that area equals 1/2 base times height. Okay. And again, we know this is a 45, 45, 90 because we know that these legs are congruent. And it gives us the hypotenuse. To get from hypotenuse to leg, we're dividing by root 2. 8 root 2 divided by root 2 gives me just 8, so each of these is 8. Area is 1/2 base times height. We just found the base, we just found the height. So 1/2 times 8 times 8, 1/2 times 64 is 32 units squared. All right. Hopefully that helped. You guys did a great job. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.